Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So in today's video, I've got a really fun gel printing technique using Gilding Flakes, and then we're going to turn these gel prints into cards. So I've got some metallic paint from IndigoBlu. I'm going to be using a variety of different paints, so really whatever you've got in your stash is going to work for this technique. And I'm just adding a little bit using a paintbrush to my gel press. I'm using a 6x6 gel press, and I've got my brayer, and I've got some scraps of paper to the side of me as well. I'm going to be using stamps and stencils from Rubber Dance today, so I really hope that you can play along using whatever you've got in your stash as well. So once I've kind of got some paint down, I've made an impression with the stencil, I've took off the excess, I'm then going to fill in all of these holes in this ink dot stencil using some gold Gilding Flakes from IndigoBlu. These are the Chariots of Fire Gilding Flakes. They're a really lovely gold colour. So all I'm doing is just adding them to all of those little holes, and it is a little bit fiddly, so you've got to have a little bit of patience for this. But once it's all in, you can then go ahead and add some paint over the top. I'm just using some black acrylic paint here, and then I'm going to pull the print. Now, because of the way I've done my layers, I did lose the colour, but that's okay because I really like the way this print turned out. So you've got all those specks of gold there using that stencil. If you've got some flakes left over on your plate like I have now, you can go ahead and add some more paint over the top. I still had quite a bit of black on my brayer because I didn't clean it off, so you get that lovely black, pink and turquoise and a hint of gold in there as well. I've still got a few more flakes on my plate, so I'm just going to use another scrap of paper just to take another pull. And I love the way the Gilding Flakes just add another texture to the gel prints. So it's just another way of adding something a little bit different. This time I'm going to add Gilding Flakes freehand, so I'm just trying to create a kind of strip of Gilding Flakes diagonally across my gel press. You will find that the flakes cling to the gel plate really easily, almost like they're a bit static. So they do kind of grab it the minute they get contact, and you'll struggle to get them back off. So you want to be sure where you're putting them down, but this is a really abstract technique really. So I'm going to use this mixed media marks from Rubber Dance. This is just the stamp set. I just want that grid stamp just to add some texture there. Once I've got a little bit of texture on my background, I can then go ahead and pull the print. I'm sorry it's slightly off camera. I will show you all the prints a little bit later on as well, so you'll get a closer look. But I really love the way this one's turned out. I love all that grid line texture in the background and then the Gilding Flakes. So yeah, and then again, I've got a few excess flakes on my plate. So again, I've added some more paint to just take another pull. And again, we'll get another really gorgeous textured pull here. My inspiration for this technique came from a little reel that I saw on Gel Press. I can't remember who it was by, but they were using whole Gilding Flake sheets on their gel press, which I didn't know existed. And they basically covered their whole plate in this sheet of Gilding Flake. And then they kind of wiggled their gel plate around to create texture, and then they added paint over the top to take the pull. So they ended up with this entire sheet of Gilding Flake as their gel print. It was very interesting. But when I saw it, I instantly thought, I bet you could do something similar with the Gilding Flakes, and I bet you could create lots of different textures and interests on your prints with Gilding Flakes. So that's where the inspiration really came from for this. But I think it's just a really nice way of adding a little bit of extra interest and also getting more from the products that we've already got in our stash. So I hope that you give this a go. If you've got a gel plate and you've got Gilding Flakes, I really hope that you give this a go. So I'm just going to show you all the prints that I've created today. I've trimmed them down, but I just really want to show you how each of them is so different. You've got hints of the metallic paints in there and hints of the Gilding Flakes. And I just think it created a really fun technique. And it's something that I'll definitely be doing again with the Gilding Flakes and just having a bit more of a play. But yeah, I love how all the prints are so different. I love how the flakes add texture and just that little bit of sparkly interest in the background. So let's turn a couple of these into cards today. So I've gone ahead and picked out two prints that I really want to use, and I'm just going to trim them down to a 4 1/4 squared. I do go ahead and trim them again a little bit later on, but for now we're just going to trim them down to 4 1/4, and then that just gives you a little bit of room to trim it down later, depending on what you choose to do over the top of your gel prints. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and work on this black pink and turquoise one. And I'm going to go ahead and use this pencil marks for stamp set from Rubber Dance. I'm going to pick out one of those lovely pencil flowers, and I'm just going to ink it up with some Wow Clear embossing ink. I'm just going to use my anti-static powder tool over the top of it, just so that there's no static. I'm going to get a good impression, and then I'm going to cover it in some white super fine embossing powder from Wow. I'm then going to go ahead and heat set that with my heat tool. I'm using the second setting on the Wow heat tool here, so you want it to be nice and hot. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick out one of the stamps for a border. Now, I first of all stamp it in some Stamps by Me white pigment ink, and it just kind of gives me the ability to see where I'm stamping it in the border, around the border. Because if I did this with clear embossing ink, you're not really going to be able to clearly see where it is, and I didn't want to overlap any of those little abstract shapes for the border. So once I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and add some add some white superfine embossing powder. I've just used a little paintbrush to get off a little bit of excess, and then I'm just going to heat set that. And this is just a really quick and easy way of adding some texture and interest to your gel prints, and an easy way to then turn them into a card. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim it down a little bit more. I just want to take off that extra 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make it a 4-inch squared panel. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a matte layer of black cardstock that's 4 1/4 squared. So once I've trimmed all that down to size, I can then go ahead and add some glue to the back of that and attach it down. I have used the Collage glue here, but of course you could use any kind of glue that you've got in your stash. You could even use just a glue stick or glue tape if you prefer. Then I've got some 6x6 white card blanks that I'm going to be using today. So I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of that panel, and I'm just using my long bladed Tim Holtz scissors just to trim this down. I haven't got any foam pads in my stash at the minute, so I'm just using the tape and then cutting it down to size. Once I've removed all the backing tape, I can then go ahead and add that centrally to that card front. And then that is the first finished card for today. So I really love how this looks. I love the kind of arty feel that it's got to it. But let's go ahead and make a second one. So for the second card, I'm using that lovely turquoise print that we've got, and I'm going to be using the Doodle Flowers stamp set from Rubber Dance to add some extra interest to the gel printed panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick out a few of the flowers that I want to use, and I'm going to ink it up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne Black ink. So I'm just going to work on a scrap of paper underneath because I don't want to get ink all over my desk. And then I'm just going to ink up the stamp and just going to stamp all the different flowers randomly all over the background. Now, if you don't like stamping over your gel prints, you could of course use stencils. You could die cut from your gel prints to create die cut focal elements or to make really kind of abstract flowers. So there's lots of different ways that you could turn your gel prints into cards. This is just the way that I'm choosing to use them today. So once I've gone ahead and kind of filled in all the gaps around the edges, I'm then going to go ahead and attach it to a black matte layer. So again, I'm just adding some liquid glue to the back of that, and I'm just going to stick that down so that there's a nice even border. I'm then going to go ahead and add some foam tape to the back again, and again I'm just using some foam tape, and I'm just cutting that down into little squares just so that I can stick that down. I am running a little bit low on foam tape, so I don't want to use too much, but I do like to make sure that there's enough foam tape on the panel so that it's not going to sag or warp or lose any kind of stickiness over time. So yeah, once I've stuck that down nice and centrally on my card, I did decide to add a sentiment to this one. I've got this sentiment that's white heat embossed on black cardstock that says "Make Your Mark." It's from the mixed media stamp set, so yeah, I just add that to the bottom. So that is the second finished card. So for a third card today, I'm just going to trim down a matte layer in black cardstock. Again, I'm going to go ahead and attach the gel print to it. And then our focal element is going to be from this Collage leaf stamp set from Rubber Dance. I'm going to use that nice big leafy foliage from the middle of the stamp set. And I just kind of hover it over the gel print just to make sure it fits nicely. So I've just attached that to my clear acrylic block, and I'm going to go and bring in my Wow Embossing Pad again and a scrap of white cardstock. I'm just using my anti-static powder bag, and then I'm going to ink up the stamp. I'm going to be using the Wow Polished Gold Embossing Powder today. This is a lovely, vibrant, smooth gold. As the name suggests, it comes out looking very polished. So Once I've added that to my image, I can then pop the excess back in the pot, and then we can go ahead and heat set that with our heat tool. Again, I'm using the hottest setting on my heat tool, the number 2 setting. And once that's heat set, which only takes a few seconds, I can then go ahead and fussy cut it out using my Cutterbee scissors. If you do have trouble fussy cutting, I do recommend just taking a look at the scissors that you've got. Are they too long? Are they not sharp enough? Are they not pointy enough at the ends? Because I really find with these Cutterbee scissors, they make it a lot easier to fussy cut with. I have tried fussy cutting with other scissors that I've got, and I find it near impossible. So I do think some of it is not just skill, a lot of it is down to the actual tools that you're using. So maybe something to look at if you are struggling with fussy cutting. So I've just gone ahead and stuck those 2 layers together. Again, I'm going to mount it onto a 6x6 white card blank. I love the way that the bold white border really draws your eye into the centre of these cards, and I think they would make a great set as a gift for somebody that really likes kind of arty things. I just think they look really nice, and they're great for just being sentiment-free cards that could be used for anything. So I think it's nice to have that in your stash. So I'm just adding a little bit of foam tape to these leaves here. I've just got a few little foam squares that are left. They're very, very small, so they work great for this. And then I'm just going to take off the backing tape here and stick that down to the centre of my card. I was going to add a sentiment and change my mind because, as I said, I think these just look better without. And so that is the 3rd finished card for today. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that it's given you some inspiration of ways you can use your Gilding Flakes with gel printing. And if you don't have Gilding Flakes, then I really hope it's just given you some ideas of how you can put your gel prints to work and turn them into cards. As always, I'll leave all the products linked in the description box below. Please don't forget to give this video a like if you've enjoyed it. I would really appreciate it. And if you've not subscribed, then please consider subscribing. I try and release a video once a week. But I do have something very exciting coming up soon, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.